Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm your host, That One Camera Guy, and in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the Canon 5D Mark IV, my thoughts about it, predictions as far as the functions and features it's going to have. If it's something that you don't want to listen to and you're tired of hearing videos like this, you're free to and more than welcome to go ahead and jump to another video. That's my complete recommendation. If, however, you want to hear what I had to say about it and my thoughts on it, continue on with the video. So let's get started. First of all, the thing I do want to say is that the 5D Mark III has been an instrumental camera for me personally. I got the camera not when it first came out, but as soon as the refurb models were available through Canon, that's when I went ahead and got my 5D Mark III. So it's been about a little over 2 years that I've had the 5D Mark III, maybe 3 now. I've used it for a variety of scenarios, shooting sports, events, portraits, weddings, shooting video, short films, and I've really pushed that camera beyond probably what it was intended to. In particular, we had the whole Magic Lantern revolution that happened with Canon DSLRs, and even that whole RAW recording video that came about, I believe, last year or so. So in general, there's just been a lot of excitement over that camera and what it's done, what it's been able to do. And right now, what I would say is that the 5D Mark III is really a perfect camera. The problem is times are changing. And so we need a camera now that sort of fits kind of the needs of people that are moving towards higher quality video production, better performance, whether it's dynamic range or ISO performance. That's kind of what people are starting to look towards too when it comes to this updated camera. Now, everybody has a reason for their camera. Everybody has a particular feature that they want to see. I know landscape folks are really wanting more dynamic range and probably more megapixels. Everybody has a particular thing that they want this camera to have. And the reality is we're just not going to get all those little things that we want. But I will say now, in terms of what the 5D Mark IV will look like, I had a preview video of what I thought it would be some months ago, but after the release of the 1DX Mark II, we already know what the 5D Mark IV is going to be and what it's going to look like in terms of specs. We know it's going to have, 4K recording, 60 frames per second, 1080p at 120 frames per second, CFast card slot, SD card slot combo, headphone jack, mic jack. What else can we say? It's going to have a similar autofocusing system to the 1DX Mark II. Basically, everything is going to be very similar. Dual pixel autofocus, touchscreen, all of that, all those bells and whistles we're going to see in the 5D Mark IV. So really, at this point, at this stage of the game, you can already predict what the announcement's going to be in September for this camera, if the announcement happens in September. So with that knowledge, the question is, do you upgrade to the 5D Mark IV? Should you go ahead and jump onto the 5D Mark IV bandwagon? So here's what the whole underlying thing is right now. The 5D Mark IV, the only things that we would have uncertainties about is the megapixels. So we don't know. I would assume it's going to be between 20 and 30. I don't think Canon's going to put a 30 plus megapixel sensor in there, considering that they already have dedicated DSLRs for large megapixels. So if you want 50 megapixels, get the 5DS or 5DSR series of cameras. So that already exists. Now, my other thing I would consider is the fact that the frames per second. Now, Canon doesn't have to increase the FPS on this camera. It could be 6 to 10. Now, will it be 10? I doubt it, because it's marking up on the 7D Mark II territory. Could it be 6? Absolutely. They don't have to change it. But we could probably guess, at least with some regards, maybe a 1 or 2 frames per second bump on this camera. But don't be surprised if they leave it at 6 frames per second. As far as dynamic range and ISO performance, high end and low end, you're probably going to see similar results as the 1DX Mark II. So in terms of sensor technology for the 5D Mark IV, we already see what we're going to expect out of the 1DX Mark II. So many folks who are hoping for this camera to come out in the specs, just take a look at what the 1DX Mark II is offering, and you will get a better idea of what you're going to get. Now, you might be thinking right now, how in the world do you think it's this, this, and this? Like these are the specs. How do you know that? Why would you think those are the specs of the camera? First of all, the reason why I think that's the specs you're going to get is if you look at the 5D Mark III and you look at the 1DX, they're basically mirrors of each other. One is like the little child of the bigger camera. The 1DX had horsepower with regards to FPS, and the 5D Mark III just didn't have the FPS horsepower, but it had everything else. All the same features and bells and whistles, with the exception of the additional headphone jack that the 5D Mark III received, that the 1DX for some odd reason did not have. So if we assume in this case that the 1DX and the 5DX are the 1DX and the 5D Mark III are symbiotic, they're related to each other, then we can assume that the 1DX Mark II and the 5D Mark IV are going to be similar and related to each other as well. And based on Canon's track record at this point, we could assume that the 5D Mark IV will just be a little brother to the 1DX Mark II. I know a lot of folks are holding out for something amazing, and I'll tell you right now, I felt the same way back in 2015, early on 2015. I said, you know what? When I was hearing the announcements of this A7R2 and the 4K video features of the GH4, I was getting really anxious, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna double down on Canon. I know Canon's gonna deliver. They're gonna make something promising. They're gonna excite people to want to go back to Canon, and you start to lose some of that track and that win when you start seeing something like the A7R2 be announced and the features that it offers, the A7S II, and then the different camera offerings from Panasonic. You just start to wonder. It's like, what is Canon doing? And in the recently released Canon 80D was not very promising for a lot of filmmakers. As a general camera, it's great. I think it's an amazing camera. But if you wanted high-end video capabilities, the camera just didn't offer it. So now when it comes down to the 5D Mark IV, do you feel really excited about that camera? And that is the biggest question that I have for myself. I don't feel as excited as I was maybe in early 2015, where I was thinking, okay, man, this 5D Mark IV is just going to be a beast. It's going to rival everything. Everyone's going to shut up about it already. People are going to be like going back to Canon. And then you start looking at what the competition's offering in terms of the tech features and capabilities. And you start to really wonder, is Canon really going to come out with something that's going to shock all of us? Or is it going to be a safe kind of bet camera and predicting what we're going to receive? So, for example, some people think 5D Mark IV is going to be different. It's going to be more geared towards video people. It's going to have like Canon C-Log. The 1DX Mark II does not have C-Log. If Canon were to only give the 5D Mark IV C-Log, I would be a really irate 1DX Mark II person, because the 1DX Mark II is supposed to be the flagship camera, and that flagship camera doesn't even have C-Log, like C-Log codec in there, or the C-Log profile inside of that camera. It doesn't even have things like focus peaking, zebras. So simple features like that really frustrate me, because it's something that could be implemented, something we've seen in the Magic Lantern, and something that's implemented a lot in the mirrorless camera system. So Canon is holding back on us. They're not giving us the features that we would like to have in the camera, and they're leaving it to a Magic Lantern to go ahead and resolve that. Here's a couple of things that could happen. Canon could just drop the bomb and release 2 cameras. We don't know. A 1DC was one of the first DSLR bodies to incorporate 4K video. Could there be a 5DC? Absolutely. Canon released 2 models, 5DS, 5DSR. Could there be 2 models of the 5D? 5D Mark IV, 5DC? We don't know. Is it possible? Absolutely. But that's just something I'm speculating right now. Because the one thing that I will say is that I really don't have a big reason to get a 5D Mark IV. Assuming that we're going to get the specs that have already been featured in the 1DX Mark II, why even get a 5D Mark IV? If I was primarily a wedding shooter, photographer, I would just pick up another 5D Mark III, especially in the news market that the prices are dropping. If you're a sports shooter, I would look at getting the 1DX. The 1DX is dropping to 3,000 US dollars. So if you're a sports shooter and you're looking at the 1DX Mark II and you have like a 7D, you might either just look at the 1DX instead. So Canon is losing its ground, and that's the way I look at it. That's just my opinion. And I think that Canon is losing steam. I don't think we're going to be overly excited about the 5D Mark IV. Here's what's going to happen. One is we are going to get more excited. We're going to start seeing images of the camera pop up in the wild. And then that's phase one. Phase two is we're going to get the specs. The specs are going to be released. And then phase three, we're going to all be antagonizing and critiquing all the specs and being Debbie Downers about it, saying, oh, these specs are terrible. And then four, it's kind of the acceptance phase. Four will be like we're going to tooth and nail fight with the camera. And then five, we're going to accept the camera for what it is. I'm without a doubt, I know for sure without a doubt that the 5D Mark IV will be a stellar camera. But in terms of what's being offered now, it may not be as great a camera as it may come out to be. I think the Sony camera system is going to release something just on the eve of the 5D Mark IV announcement, something like, let's say, a Sony Alpha A7 Mark III. And that camera could scare people. That camera could have all the same bells and whistles that the 5D Mark IV has, but better. So we don't know what's going to happen, what's going to go down. I still don't like the video features, the video recording choice of using Motion JPEG. I just don't like that. You're using Motion JPEG, it's going to require big CFast cards, and it's going to use up a lot of data. There's this group of folks that say, well, if you can afford this camera, then you should be able to afford storage space, or storage space is really cheap nowadays. People don't realize that everybody has a different circumstance and scenario. So if I record, let's say, 500 gigabytes of data, and that could be easily done within a couple hours of recording with the 5D Mark IV, or just the Motion JPEG 4K. You need to store it on a hard drive. Well, most folks who are serious about their video will have either a RAID and then a backup of some sort. So they're having to buy multiple hard drives in order to support all this data and footage. And that's a lot of data. And everyone thinks, well, data is cheap, just buy an external drive. It sounds easy, but in practice, it's not practical for those of us who are recording stuff for a client and need to make sure you have a backup of that. So to say simply like just buy extra storage, it's not that simple. So there you go. That is just my thoughts right now on the 5D Mark IV. Am I going to get the camera? I don't know. I'm looking to pick up a camera to review it, but I don't know if I'm going to pick up a camera to personally keep it. I think for a lot of folks out there that are itching out for the 5D Mark IV, if you don't need 4K, I think the 5D Mark III is still going to be the best camera to stick with. If you need more dynamic range and latitude, you should just start looking at Nikon and Sony cameras if you need that for your system, because Canon is just not going to deliver on it. And like I said, I'm not bashing on Canon. It's kind of sad in a lot of ways because I really want Canon to succeed. I want them to release a product that we're going to love and enjoy, that's going to really shake the foundation. But I think it has a lot to do with price. And I don't think they're going to release a 5D Mark IV for $2,400. They're probably going to release it at about $3,500. And the features themselves, it's just not going to be feasible for... The features that are going to be placed in that camera is not going to be enough to dissuade a lot of folks that have already migrated to Panasonic and Sony. So, sad to say, I think Canon right now, if you're a sports shooter, then I think the Canon system or Nikon system is where you want to be at. But if you're not a Canon, if you're not a sports shooter, then a Sony system at this time is something to consider. There are rumors of a Sony A9 that's going to probably be out there. We don't know if it's going to happen yet, but if it comes out to be what the camera we hope it could be, it's going to really set back a lot of naysayers about the Sony mirrorless camera system. Well, folks, that's all I have as far as my thoughts on the 5D Mark IV. Let me know down below if you agree or disagree with me on any of these things about the camera itself. Like I said, I don't think the 5D Mark IV is going to be as exciting as we would hope. Like I said, I wanted to be exciting. The only thing I could imagine is that they split the line and they create two cameras. Don't know if it'll happen, but I know for sure the 5D Mark IV's features are already predictable. They're already predictable. We kind of already know what they're going to be. So I don't think we're going to be super excited about what we get. But if they do release another model camera, that could really shake up a lot of the folks that are in the industry right now. So, well, that's it. That's all I have for you in this video. If you thought it was interesting, give it a like. If you kind of enjoy these talks that I do, I wouldn't mind doing a few more on different topics. But with that said, I'm your Style and Camera Guy, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye. Wow, I think I just rambled on a little too much in this video, so forgive me. I'd love to start doing a discussion and podcast type thing with a few other photographers or videographers out there. That'd be really cool. And just kind of talk about the industry and where it's going and some of the products that are out there already. But again, let me know what you think down below, your thoughts on this whole 5D Mark IV thing, whether it's going to make it, not make it. Is it going to change things? Is it going to be a game changer? Who knows? I'll see you later. Bye.